Hello friends, in this video we are going to talk about the changes which are going to happen from 1st October 2022 in pursuance of Finance Act 2022, for which the provisions have now been notified. So let us look at the major changes which are going to happen now after this. First of all, ITC can only be availed if it is appearing in GSTR 2B. This had been notified from 1st January 22. Now the department or the government has gone one step further by stating that such ITC should not be under the restricted category of GSTR 2B. So what are the aspects which would be under the restricted category of GSTR 2B? Now these are all the bullets which might be under the restricted category. All these bullets are yet to be prescribed. So all of this are there in the act now, but from the rules perspective, these are to be prescribed. Once these are prescribed, the ITC would further be restricted. First, the supplier is having new registration. So if the supplier who is providing the goods or services is having new registration, then up to the prescribed time period, which has not been prescribed till date, maybe 2 months, 3 months, whatever it may be, he will not be able to pass on ITC. Next, he has defaulted in tax payment and default has continued for the prescribed period. So he has defaulted in the payment of taxes, and that default has continued for, let's say, 3 months, 4 months. The period as of now has not been prescribed. Has paid tax lower in 3B as compared to 1 by the prescribed limit. So there is a limit which may be prescribed, and if the supplier has paid taxes, I'm not talking about myself, I'm talking about my vendor, if he has paid lower taxes in 3B than in GSTR 1 by the prescribed limit, in that case I will not get ITC. Or if my supplier, again a very difficult provision to follow, if my supplier has taken more ITC in his 3B as compared to his 2B, I'm not talking about my 2B 3B, my vendor's 2B 3B, by a specified limit, so maybe 105%, 110%, whatever it may be, if my vendor has done this, in that case I will not get ITC. Next, supplier has paid higher proportion of tax from his credit than what is allowed as per law. So whatever is allowed as per law, he has paid more taxes from his credit. So the proportion which can be paid through credit and cash may be prescribed through law. For example, for Rule 86B, 99% payment has to be can be made by credit, 1% has to be paid by cash for the specified persons. If that is not followed, the ITC of the recipient would be restricted, right? And for other notified persons. So these are now effective. Only difference is, if once these 4 bullets in the beginning that we are saying, if these are time period is prescribed or the limit is prescribed, thereafter in my view it becomes applicable. Till that time it is not yet applicable. But once this limit is prescribed, in that case the ITC would further be restricted by the clauses given here. Next, important provisions which regard to ITC have now been removed. The matching of credit which was with regard to GSTR 1, 2, 3, which was under the erstwhile regime, wherein once GST had come in, there was a prescription of GSTR 1, 2, 3. All these provisions were still there under the Act, all these regressive provisions. So all these provisions have now been removed completely from the Act and rules. Even there was a new return which was supposed to come in as per section 43A. New return never came in, that was also scrapped. So even that has been removed completely now. Reversal of ITC with interest if the supplier does not pay the taxes. So section 41 has also been modified. So section 41 first of all says that ITC will no longer be only on provisional basis. So earlier ITC according to the law was on provisional basis till it was matched. Now that provisional basis was subject to GSTR 2 and 3, which never came in. So there was no concept of having provisional credit. That's why they have removed the concept of provisional credit from the law. Second, it was said that any ITC which is taken on provisional basis would be allowed only for payment of self-assessed tax. Since ITC itself is not on provisional basis, there is no longer requirement of this provision. So any ITC I am taking, I can not only use it for making payment of self-assessed tax but also department determined taxes. So any taxes determined by the department, even that can be used. The credit can be used to even pay those taxes. Also, it has been said that if the credit is availed by a person and the tax has not been paid by the supplier. So if I have availed the credit and the tax has not been paid by the supplier, there is a new provision that I need to reverse this ITC along with interest. So whatever tax is not paid by the supplier, I would have to reverse the ITC. This is not talking about 2B, whether it is appearing in 2B or not. That is a separate provision completely. This is not talking about whether my vendor has done his 1(3)B matching correctly, whether my vendor has filed his GSTR 1 correctly. This is simply stating if my vendor is not paying taxes for any reason, and it was, let's say, even though appearing in my 2B, still I would have to reverse the tax along with applicable interest. Applicable interest means if I have availed and utilized the ITC wrongly, both availed and utilized, then interest is applicable. Otherwise it is not. And it has been stated that later on, after reversal, if my supplier makes the payment of taxes, I can re-avail that ITC without any time limit. So I can re-avail that ITC and it would be prescribed as per law, right? So once again, in such manner as may be prescribed, as of now no manner has been prescribed as per law, but this is what is the provision which has been already notified from 1st October. Now, very important, there have been a number of extension of due dates and it is applicable from financial year 21-22. So this is a direct amendment which is going to affect us right away. We are all very happy to see the relaxation now coming in the due dates for taking off for due dates which were very cumbersome to comply with, because every person is busy with their tax audit in September. In October they are having their income tax returns. So finally what the government has said, for a number of things which are applicable, for which the due date is applicable, for due date of September return, that is now extended to 30th November, right? What are the due dates which have now been extended? Issuance and declaration of credit note. Earlier it was due date of September return. That means I had to declare it by September returns due date. That means by 20th October. So I had to issue this by September. So by 30th September if I issued, I could declare it by 20th October. But now I have to issue and declare it by 30th November. So naturally it has to be issued within 31st October, so that it can be filed in the October month's return to be filed in November. Even GSTR 1, here from due date of September return, they have made it 30th November. That means it is no longer November returns due date, it is actually 30th November. So it is not earlier due date of September return, mostly was 20th October, except for maybe QRMP SSCs. So earlier the due date was 20th October. Now this has been extended to 30th of November. Both for GSTR 1 and 3B, it has been extended to 30th November. Also, due date for availment of ITC. Even due date of availment of ITC under 16(4), a very big issue, was up to 20th October. So if I could avail ITC of 21-22 only up to 20th October. This has now been extended to 30th November. So I can now avail ITC up to 30th November of subsequent year, right? Very welcome move. That means October return, I can still avail my ITC for 21-22 even if I file my return for October. Condition is I should be filing by 30th November. Due date of GSTR for rectification of GSTR 8, that means person who are e-commerce operator, that is also extended to 30th of November. Cancellation of registration due to non-filing of returns. Earlier it was stated that for composition dealers, if they did not file their returns for 3 consecutive tax periods, their registration would be cancelled, right? Now it has been stated that a person who is a composition dealer has not furnished the return for a financial year beyond 3 months from the due date of furnishing of annual return. So they are saying if I am not furnished within 3 months, and the rules as of now is prescribing 2 tax periods, that I am not furnishing my return for 2 prescribed tax periods. In that case, my registration for composition dealers may stand cancelled. Also, for normal dealers other than composition dealers, the prescribed time period is 6 months. Now they have said for such period as may be prescribed. So they are saying it may be for a prescribed time period. and luckily we have the notification coming in. They have said 6 months. That means whatever was there in the act, the 6 months which was there in the act, the rules have now got the power to prescribe the provisions. So if the rules are prescribing to be 6 continuous tax periods, that means 6 continuous months. If I am not filing my return month in that case, my registration may get cancelled. For 2 tax periods, we need to remember that when we are talking about QRMP scheme, a person, if they do not furnish their returns for 2 consecutive tax periods, for 2 quarters, if they have not furnished their return, in that case their registration may get cancelled, right? For composition dealers, it is 3 months from the due date of furnishing the return, right? So there are 3 kinds of taxpayers. Normal taxpayers, for that time period is 6 months. For QRMP dealers, it is 2 tax periods. For composition dealers, it is 3 months from the due date of furnishing the return. If that is not fulfilled, the registration may get cancelled. Also, interestingly, from 1st February 19, when the law had made certain amendments, the government by mistake had removed the relevant date for supplies made to SEZ without payment of tax. We all know we can file refund up to 2 years from relevant date. For SEZ, the relevant date, for SEZ without payment of tax, the relevant date was not there in the law. Now it has been said the relevant date would be due date of furnishing of return under section 39, which is 3B. So whatever 3B return they have submitted, we have to conclude 2 years from the due date of furnishing 3B. And based on that, my refund time limitation would get expired. Now what are the other amendments which have been prescribed? Sequential filing of GSTR 1, except for certain notified persons. That means the law is saying, though the portal did not allow this, but now the act is stating this very clearly, that I can only file my returns if I have filed my return for the earlier period. That means I can file my August 1 only after I file my July GSTR 1, right? Or earlier periods GSTR 1. Also, I can file 3B only when GSTR 1 has been furnished. So earlier the provision was, if my 1 has been furnished, in that case I can furnish my next month's GSTR 1 only if 3B of the last month has been furnished. Now it has been prescribed, only if I furnish my GSTR 1 I can file 3B. So now it is basically 1 3B 1 3B. That is how the provision is now structured. Also, 49 subsection 12 is now prescribing the max amount that can be paid through ITC. So though the rules under 86B says that not more than 99% can be made through credit, payment of not more than 99% can be made through credit for certain category of taxpayers. Act did not prescribe it, so now this provision has come in the Act. Also, for QRMP, it was not prescribed that the self-assessed tax can be paid through on a monthly basis. That had not been prescribed under the Act, which has now been done. Amendment in GSTR 3B made independent of that made in 1 and 2B. So earlier it was said subject to section 37 and 38 amendment can be made in the GSTR 3B, but that was never there. I am not required to make amendment in 3B only if I am making amendment in 1 and 2B. No, 3B is an independent form. So they have now corrected this issue. Also, the late fees have now been prescribed for GSTR 8 as well. And the last amendment which we are going to discuss today is withholding and deduction allowed for all types of refund. So now it has been stated that for all kinds of refund, if let's say I have any kind of demand pending before the government, in that case the government or the department can deduct my demand amount before giving me the refund. So they can deduct my demand amount. That was only applicable for refund of credit of ITC. Now it has been stated that the refund is that this is allowed not just for ITC, but this is also allowed for all other refunds also, right? So this is the final amendment which we are going to discuss. So with this we have come to the end of this video. I have covered most of the important amendments which have come in, which affect most of the category of taxpayers. Thank you so much for giving me a very patient hearing. I wish to see you in another video. Please like my video and subscribe to the channel if you have liked today's session. Thank you so much.